then.
Yep, go ahead.
Hey everyone, Dave Secunda here, CEO of WorkBright. I'm really psyched to bring you a quick overview of the I-9 and the EVerify process. If you're a certified HR person, this might be a review for you. We're really targeting this to those folks who might have percolated up into the HR role. So first of all, big picture, what the heck is the I-9 form? Many folks might have seen the paper version of this form because every single employee in the United States has to fill it out. Basically, since 1986, employers are required to do an I-9 form within the first 3 days of employment for anyone who's working in the United States who is getting paid. If they're not in the United States, they don't need to fill it out, but for everyone else, we're bound to it. So what are the various sections? You might hear people talk about like Section 1 and Section 2. Section 1 is exclusively for the employee. It has their name, address, that sort of information. The thing to remember is only the employee can edit Section 1. If they have an error, like they use a nickname, you cannot change it for them. Whether it's electronic or a paper version, it needs to go back to that employee for them to redo or correct Section 1. All the things that I'm talking about today apply both to the electronic I-9, like WorkBright does, as well as the paper I-9. Then, what about Section 2? It's the verification, or the employer section. This is where the employer steps in and says, yes, I've actually seen this documentation from list A, B, or C, or some combination therein, and I think it's valid. That's what has to be done within those 3 days. It has to be dated on the day that that document was actually seen, whether that's when you're filling out the form or not. It can actually be completed by anyone in the company or even outside of the company. Many times people think it has to be the HR person. It can be any designated representative of the company, even just a friend of that employee if they're working in a remote location. What about the question of if you see a copy of a driver's license and a social security card, should you actually keep the copy, once you see the documents, the actual documents, or not? Well, you need to make the decision all or nothing. You need to keep copies of all of those forms, all those documents, or none of them. And best practices pretty much says keep a copy of them these days. Gosh, what about people you're rehiring? Well, many people find it easier to just redo the I-9 once again, and that's a common practice. There is a Section 3 on there where you can go through, and if their documents are still valid, you can sign the Section 3. Most people end up just going through and doing a brand new I-9 form. Last thing, what if you find something is wrong? Well, it is best to immediately correct it. If you find there's not an I-9 in your file, go and get that done, even if it's a month or a year later. If there's something wrong, either correct that, initial it, and get it back into your file, or completely do a new form and then write the reasons. And that, again, is whether you're in the electronic world or the paper world. High level, that's what you need to know about the I-9. Now, what about EVerify, that other thing? Many people think EVerify is an electronic I-9. Not the case. EVerify is an electronic process to further verify identification and work authorization. It's required by those that are doing federal contracts for the federal government, and in a very few number of states and some localities as well. If you have to do EVerify, you probably already know it. For everyone else, it is an option, but you do not need to do it. Anyone, if you're doing EVerify, must do the I-9 as well. So it's not either or, it's I-9 or I-9 and EVerify, and those both have to happen within the magical 3 days. So how does EVerify work? Well, somebody in your company goes through a very simple online training and setup and becomes one of, potentially more than one, of the designees of your company to go in and run EVerify. It's really simple, it's all online, and that process then is such that the incoming employee will show their identity documents. The person will go into the EVerify system, and it will show a picture of that EVerify, of the identity document, and the person who's verifying just simply goes, oh yeah, that's the passport picture I'm looking at in my hand, it all looks good, and then you can print out or save a verification of that so it shows that you've actually done it. Now, one thing about EVerify is it is, once again, all or nothing. If anyone in your company signs up for EVerify, it obligates your entire company for doing EVerify all the way into the future. So once again, you can't choose to do it for a subsection of employees. You need to do it all or none. So if it's optional for you, should you do EVerify? Well, overall, what we're hearing, word on the street, is EVerify gets a lot of scrutiny. The government has immediate, transparent access to see whether you're getting it done in those 3 days or not. And so what we're hearing overall is if you have the option not to do EVerify, you might wait until if or when it becomes a requirement and just stick with your I-9 form. All right, so quick wrap up. You got to do all employees with an I-9 form within the first 3 days of work. Don't forget it. You have to see the physical documents and get that done. You should audit your I-9s to make sure they're compliant because the fines are really, really big if you don't have everything correctly in your file. Do EVerify if you have to. If you don't, you might have an internal discussion, but remember that if you're doing it for a few employees, you have to do it for all of them. You can't selectively do that. And then if you are doing an electronic I-9, just know that you're responsible for that. And so dig into your provider and make sure, like WorkBright, that there is an audit trail, that there's a backup, and that that form is the most up-to-date version of that I-9. So overall, remember, WorkBright keeps you compliant. It helps focus your time and energy on those employees as opposed to the administration. And the I-9 is just another way that we get that done for you. Have a great day.